Fatal Fury City of the Wolves is the latest installment in the iconic Fatal Fury series and a direct sequel to Garou Mark of the Wolves. The game takes place 2 years after the events of Garou. What do you mean 26 years? Only 2 years separate the two games. I don't know what you're talking about. It's not like we completely gave up hope on ever seeing a sequel on anything. Definitely not. Anyway, City of the Wolves gives us the chance to catch up with the characters, seeing what they've been up to between the games, what drives them this time around, and how their stories wrap up. Now, if you're looking for gameplay impressions or breakdowns of new mechanics, I've already got you covered. I've made several videos on arcades, episodes of Southtown, ranked matches, and even a top 5 things I liked and hated about the game. But for this video, none of that matters. This one is all about the story, and there is a lot to dive into. But before that, as always, if you like this content, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and click the bell icon so you can be notified with every new video posted. The story of Fatal Fury City of the Wolves is split across 2 distinct modes. The main arcade mode features the most relevant and impactful story developments, where things are actually moving forward for each character. In addition to that, there's the Episodes of Southtown mode, which serves as a collection of side stories or spin-offs. These episodes provide extra context and help fill in the gaps between Garou Mark of the Wolves and City of the Wolves, shedding light on what the characters have been up to during that time. While some of these episodes are insightful and worth discussing, others are completely irrelevant and don't contribute anything meaningful to the overarching plot, so I'll be skipping those in this video. A year had passed since Rock joined his uncle Kine in the hopes of finding his mother, Marie, long presumed dead until Kine revealed otherwise. The two spent that year tracking her down while fending off rival gangs eager to take down the new boss of Second Southtown. Alongside them was Vox, a new recruit in Kine's organization and originally an assassin sent to eliminate him. But before he could carry out his mission, Kine's loyal bodyguard, Grant, intervened. Instead of eliminating Vox, Grant saw potential in him and chose to train him as his successor, knowing his own time was limited. Life for Rock, Kine, and Vox became a constant cycle of training and fighting against hostile factions. But amid the chaos, Kine couldn't ignore the internal struggle he saw growing in Rock, a darkness trying to break free. He knew that Geese's blood running through Rock's veins was the source of that unease, and though he couldn't stop it, he kept a close eye on his nephew while pushing him to grow stronger. One day, Kine suggested that Rock take a break from training and clear his head, hoping some time away would help ease his growing inner turmoil. Rock took his advice, and during a brief walk through Southtown, he came to a realization. Part of his unrest came from the guilt of having left Terry, the man who raised him, without so much as a proper goodbye. Wanting to make things right, Rock sought Terry out for the first time since their separation in Garou. After a heartfelt sparring match, Rock finally expressed his gratitude. Terry in turn invited him for a meal, marking a quiet but powerful moment of reconciliation that left their bond stronger than ever. As for Terry, the legendary lone wolf was still living life on his own terms, drifting from place to place, picking up part-time jobs, and entering local fighting tournaments. In one of these events, a special rule required participants to team up with a randomly assigned partner. To Terry's surprise, his partner turned out to be none other than his longtime rival, Billy Khan. Unsurprisingly, Billy wasn't thrilled about the arrangement, but the two agreed to cooperate. Over the course of the tournament, their hostility began to fade as they started to understand each other better. While Billy could never fully forgive Terry for Geese Howard's death, his master and father figure, he no longer held a real malice toward him. Their journey eventually led them to Geese Tower, where they faced off in a personal sparring match. In a twist of fate, Billy nearly fell from the tower's edge, echoing Geese's tragic end. but Terry caught him just in time. They weren't friends, and maybe never would be. But at that moment, both men seemed to silently agree it was time to let go of the past. But the past, it seemed, wasn't done with them. Not long after the events at Geese Tower, Terry received a troubling message from Mai. A ghost had been seen in Southtown, targeting and challenging several fighters. That ghost was none other than Geese Howard himself, or rather, a nightmarish spectre bearing his likeness. A few unlucky souls had the misfortune of encountering this phantom, including Vox and Marco, both barely surviving their run-ins. Another fighter drawn into this supernatural crisis was Preecha, Joe Higashi's student. A scientist by training, Preecha believed in cold hard facts and dismissed anything paranormal as nonsense. So waking up one morning to find a ghostly woman haunting her, clinging silently to her shoulder, completely shattered her worldview. To make matters worse, only she could see the spirit. What followed was a bizarre and reluctant quest to uncover the ghost's identity and lay her to rest. Preecha eventually discovered that the woman was the last remnant of a family wiped out by Geese Howard long ago, and that her spirit remained trapped in the world because Geese still held something precious to her. Preecha broke into Geese Tower in search of this memento, only to come face to face with Nightmare Geese himself. Despite the terrifying encounter, she escaped with the item, a pendant containing a child's photo. Recognizing the boy as a local crab vendor, Preecha returned the pendant to him. It had once belonged to his mother, the very ghost that had been haunting her. With the pendant returned, the spirit finally vanished, leaving Preecha with closure, and maybe just a slightly more open mind. While Preecha succeeded in laying one spirit to rest, another ghost continued to linger, the spectre of Geese Howard. Eventually, Terry confronted the apparition himself. Though he could barely believe his eyes, there was no denying it. Geese had returned in some form, and a fierce battle erupted. Despite being a ghost, Geese fought exactly as he had in life, taking and dealing damage like any flesh and blood fighter. In the end, Terry triumphed once again, but as he prepared to deliver the final blow, the spirit whispered a single word that stopped him cold. Rock. The name alone was enough to shake Terry to his core. Despite objections from Billy, who believed Geese's ghost should be left alone, Terry continued his quest to put Geese's soul to rest. Their final confrontation took place atop Geese Tower, just like so many years ago. This time, Terry's victory was absolute. As Geese's ghost began to fade in a soft, glowing light, Terry spoke, promising to look after Rock and ensure he'd be safe. That promise seemed to lift the final weight, keeping the spirit tethered to the world. In the end, Geese's lingering regret had been about his son, and ironically, it was his greatest rival who gave him peace, someone he knew would be a better father to Rock than he ever was. From that moment on, Terry took that silent vow seriously and began to reign in Rock like never before, even teaching him his signature and most powerful technique, the legendary Power Geyser. Months after the events surrounding Geese's ghost, Southtown once again became the epicenter of chaos with the announcement of a new King of Fighters tournament. Invitations were sent to elite fighters around the world, but something about this edition felt different. The sponsor remained shrouded in mystery, but the name attached to the event sent chills down the spines of those familiar with Southtown dark history. Stroheim, a name unmistakably linked to Wolfgang Krauser, Geese Howard's fearsome half-brother. What truly raised eyebrows, however, was the tournament's grand prize, Geese's legacy. While many participants didn't know exactly what that meant, they knew anything tied to Geese must be valuable. But some fighters knew the truth. It referred to none other than the legendary Scrolls of Immortality, or the Jin Scrolls. These mystical artifacts, central to the plot of Fatal Fury 3, were said to grant eternal life, Geese had obtained the scrolls at the end of that game, but in a rare moment of foresight, he ordered Billy Khan to destroy them, fearing the uncontrollable power they possessed. However, unbeknownst to Geese, Billy never followed through. Having witnessed countless members of the Howard connection die chasing those scrolls, Billy couldn't bring himself to destroy them. And now, years later, those very scrolls had resurfaced as the prize for this mysterious tournament. In the power vacuum left by Geese's death, Billy Khan stepped up and took control of the Howard connection, acting as his protector against the countless enemies Geese had made over the years. Unlike his former boss, Billy ruled with a surprisingly lighter touch. He even showed an unexpected soft side, helping Hokutomaru in his bizarre quest to become a gentleman, going so far as to buy the kid a proper outfit for a date with BJJ. Though still in possession of the Scrolls of Immortality, Billy never intended to use them for himself. Instead, he believed they rightfully belonged to Rock, Geese's only son. But before Billy could hand them over, the scrolls were stolen by an unknown figure. Now, with the scrolls suddenly reappearing as the official prize of the new King of Fighters tournament, Billy had no choice but to enter, determined to retrieve them and uncover the identity of the thief. Despite Rock's affiliation with Kain's gang, Billy remained loyal to both Geese's legacy and Rock himself. He maintained contact with Rock and Kain throughout the events of the tournament, knowing they were all, in one way or another, fighting for the same cause. Meanwhile, within the Heinlein household, Kain and Rock were preparing their own move. With the independence of Second Southtown secured, Kain's influence had clearly reached its peak, yet one piece was still missing, his long-lost sister, Marie. Thanks to an investigation led by Vox, Kain and Rock discovered that Marie had been secretly held captive for years by none other than Mr. Big. Back when Geese was still alive, Mr. Big had abducted her as a bargaining chip against his rival. Although Mr. Big was a notorious jerk, he surprisingly did something good for once. He managed to cure Marie of her chronic illness during her captivity, and she was now in better shape than she had ever been. Kain reached out to Mr. Big and struck a deal, Geese's legacy, the Scrolls of Immortality, in exchange for Marie's freedom. But with the scrolls now missing and reappearing as the grand prize of the new King of Fighters tournament, Kain and Rock had no choice but to enter and win them back. Accompanied by Kain's new bodyguard, Vox, and their unlikely ally, Billy Khan, the group entered the tournament with a single focused goal: recover the scrolls and bring Marie home. Also pursuing the Gene Scrolls, but for entirely different reasons, was Kevin Ryan, who had received official orders to confiscate the legendary artifact. For the past 2 years, Kevin had been relentlessly tracking the man responsible for his partner's death, Freeman, the deranged and dangerous fugitive who had slipped through the cracks at the end of the last tournament. The failure to apprehend him continued to weigh heavily on Kevin's conscience. With the scrolls now resurfacing as KOF's grand prize, Kevin saw a new lead. He believed that an item of such mythical power would inevitably lure out dangerous individuals, perhaps even Freeman himself. With that hope in mind, Kevin entered the tournament, determined to seize the scrolls and finally bring justice to his partner. When the hungry wolf received his invitation to the tournament and saw what was at stake, he knew he had to join. The prize, Geese's legacy, was troubling enough, but more importantly, Terry knew Rock would be there, and that worried him. Acting as both a mentor and a father figure, Terry entered the King of Fighters tournament, determined to keep an eye on the boy and protect him if needed. Meanwhile, Mai, who had sat out the previous tournament, found herself pulled back into the action when she received an unexpected mission from none other than Sokaku, the head of her rival's clan. The message was clear: the upcoming tournament would become the epicenter of a massive catastrophe if no one intervened. Knowing full well that Sokaku would never reach out for help unless the situation was truly desperate, Mai accepted the mission and entered the tournament, determined to stop whatever evil was brewing in the shadows. Not every fighter cared about the tournament's prize. Many entered with their own motives and personal goals. Gato, for instance, had finally confronted his father during the last tournament, only to suffer a crushing defeat that left him blinded. The encounter ignited the burning thirst for revenge that consumed him. In the aftermath, he trained relentlessly, honing his other senses to a razor's edge and somehow becoming even more dangerous despite his lack of sight. Just before the new King of Fighters tournament was announced, Gato's vision returned, but by then he had grown so accustomed to fighting without it that he chose to keep his eyes closed in battle, relying solely on his sharpened instincts. Certain his father would be among the participants, he didn't hesitate to join. Hot in his heels was his younger sister Hotaru, who had already lost too much. Her mother, her father, and now her brother, who refused to acknowledge her. Despite Gato's cold rejection and desperate attempt to push her away, Hotaru remained determined to reunite what was left of their shattered family. She entered the tournament as well, believing it was her best chance to reach both Gato and their father, and finally bring them back together. Not every fighter stepped into the tournament with a heavy burden or a world-ending mission. Some were just there for personal reasons or sheer curiosity. Preecha, Joe's enthusiastic pupil, entered the tournament purely for scientific research. She wanted to study the unique abilities of fighters up close. I mean, seriously, how does a power wave work? And why doesn't a Rippuken get slowed down by friction? She was determined to find out. Okotomaru, the ever-righteous young ninja, saw this as his big opportunity to prove his strength and resolve to both his master and to the citizens of South Town. Tizok, still wearing the scars of a previous defeat at the hands of a mysterious masked man who turned out to be Vox, decided it was time to don the Griffin mask once more. Not for revenge, but for the kids who continued to cheer him on despite his loss. Meanwhile, Marco Rodriguez entered the tournament burning with righteous fury. His dojo had been attacked by a mysterious figure who didn't just wreck the place, but took their dojo sign, a blatant act of disrespect. For Marco, the King of Fighters was the perfect stage to track down the perpetrator, reclaim his dojo's honor, and deliver justice. One of the most unexpected faces in the tournament was none other than the world-renowned DJ, Salvatore Ganacci, known for his eccentric performances and wild stage energy. Few knew that he was also a seasoned martial artist and an old friend of the king. With a desire to draw inspiration straight from the chaos of combat, Salvatore stepped into the King of Fighters arena, hoping the adrenaline of battle would fuel his next big musical masterpiece. And of course, there was Bijine, the fearless and flamboyant captain of the pirate's crew Lilian Knights. Never one to pass up a golden opportunity, she set her sights on the Jin Scrolls, a prize far too tempting for any self-respecting treasure hunter to ignore. For Janae, the KOF tournament wasn't just about the fight, it was about claiming what could be the ultimate loot. As for Kim's eldest son, Don Juan, his ego had only grown since his impressive performance in the last tournament. He slacked off in training, relying solely on his natural talent, until his father summoned him to the dojo one day and beat the arrogance out of him. Without uttering a word, Kim made his message clear: talent alone isn't enough. But Don Juan wasn't ready to accept that. Determined to prove that raw genius could triumph discipline, he entered the tournament to prove his point, his way. During the tournament, Kevin received crucial intel from his relative Blue Mary. She had finally tracked down Freeman's location. Not just a lead this time, but the real deal. Without wasting time, Mary headed straight to the scene with Kevin's young companion, Marky, in tow. But upon arrival, she was ambushed. Freeman struck from the shadows and neutralized her before she could react. Marky, terrified but brave, grabbed Mary's gun and aimed it at the criminal. But standing face to face with such a terrifying presence, the boy froze, his courage faltering under Freeman's overwhelming aura. things were about to take a dark turn until help arrived just in time. Terry burst onto the scene and pulled Mary to safety, while Kevin landed the final blow. With 3 men finally subdued, Kevin avenged the fallen partner and reassured Marky that it was all over. Justice had finally been served. Donovan and Preecha eventually crossed paths in the tournament. Preecha was fascinated by Donovan's electric kick techniques, scientifically speaking of course, while Donovan was mostly fascinated by the fact that she was a girl. Their match turned into a light-hearted but competitive fight, with Donovan ultimately claiming victory. Despite the loss, Preecha's sharp analytical skills struck a chord with him. She pointed out the glaring flaws in his flashy, style-over-substance approach, a critique Donovan admitted was spot on. Turns out, trying to look cool mid-fight wasn't the best strategy. With a date on the horizon, something Preecha promised if she lost, Donovan left the arena beaming, accompanied by his brother. That's when we learned Preecha had a second mission all along, assigned by her master, Joe. At Kim's request, Joe had tasked her with challenging Donovan and giving him a much-needed reality check. Since Donovan wouldn't listen to his father or any other old guy, Kim figured someone his own age, especially a girl, might just get through to him, and clearly the plan worked. Meanwhile, Marco finally came face to face with Vox, and to his shock, Vox was holding the very dojo sign Marco had been searching for. It was then revealed that Vox had been the one who attacked the dojo all along. After completing his intense training underground, he sought to test his strength and chose the Kyokugen dojo as a proving ground. Taking the sign as a trophy, he hoped it would draw out a worthy challenger. His plan worked. Marco, burning with anger and resolve, stepped up to defend the honor of his dojo and reclaim what was taken. Their battle was intense, but Marco's unwavering determination gave him the edge he needed to win. True to his word, Vox handed over the dojo sign, acknowledging Marco's strength. Now when it comes to who actually made it to the finals canonically, well, you know how fighting game stories go. Each character has their own version of events, with details that can range from slightly inconsistent to completely different. That said, it's generally accepted that Rock and Terry were the finalists of this KOF edition. They are the main protagonists of the game, and they even share the spotlight on the box art. Rock, along with Kine and Billy, made it to Geese Howard, the designated site for the Final Showdown. Waiting for them, there was Terry. There were no hard feelings between them, just mutual respect. They congratulated each other on how far they had come and got ready for a clean, respectful fight. The actual winner? That part is still up for debate. No one really knows for sure, but regardless of who won, the result was the same. Rock ended up with the Jin Scrolls. If he beat Terry, then he earned them fair and square, but if Terry came out on top, he would have handed them over anyway. He didn't have any use for them, unlike Rock. With the scrolls secured, it was finally time to complete the deal. Mr. Big showed up on site with Marie, alive and well. But just when things seemed to be wrapping up, an unexpected interruption struck. Jack Turner, a former gang member, launched a surprise attack on Mr. Big, leading to a quick scuffle, during which Marie collapsed to the ground. Although it wasn't a life-threatening injury, seeing his mother collapse on the ground was the final straw for Rock. In that moment, the dark power he had always tried to suppress finally took over. The scrolls ignited into flames as Rock transformed into a version of himself that no one had ever seen before. One overwhelmed by fury, aggression, and a deep sense of rage. To fully understand what triggered this shift, we need to look at Billy's ending, which offers crucial insight into Rock's transformation. The source of the outburst was the Jin Scrolls. Billy had been ordered by Geese years ago to destroy them, but never followed through. That still doesn't explain though why would Rock be so strongly affected by the scrolls when he isn't part of the Jin family. Plot twist, he is. To understand that, we have to go back to Fatal Fury 3. Shunrei and Shonshu, the main villains, reacted to the scrolls because they were the reincarnations of two powerful ancient spirits, Kuryu and Karyu. But there was a twist. A third brother, Tyryu, had reincarnated over 1,000 years earlier. At some point in history, his bloodline made its way to Germany. That lineage eventually merged into the Stroheim family. Yes, the same one that Geese and Krauser come from, which actually helps explain their incredible strength. But when it came time for Tyryu's spirit to awaken again, he didn't choose Geese or Krauser. Instead, he chose Rock. Not because of strength, but because Rock reflected Tyryu's own personality, his rebellion against his father and his youth, traits that made him more compatible than anyone else. That, along with the fact that he is around the same age as Shonrei and Shonshu. But what was going on inside Rock's mind? A fierce internal struggle was taking place between his true self and a darker version, fueled by all his buried insecurities. This alternate persona was consumed by anger, resentment toward his father, and deep mistrust of others. It was essentially the embodiment of all the doubts and emotional scars Rock carried over the years. And unfortunately, it was this side that seized control of his body, lashing out with incredible force and eerie techniques that resembled Geese's own. Naturally, Cherry couldn't just stand by and let this happen. He stepped in to stop Rock, initiating one of the most intense battles he had ever faced. The fight reached its climax when Terry landed a devastating kick that sent Rock crashing into a ledge, one that gave way under the pressure. Rock began to plummet from the tower's edge, in a moment eerily similar to how his father once fell. Terry acted instantly, grabbing Rock by the arm mid-fall, but Rock, afraid of dragging Terry down with him, forcefully pulled his arm away. As he descended into the abyss, Rock closed his eye, accepting what he believed to be the end. And that's when he had a vision. He saw a memory of his father, Geese, during a moment that once filled him with pain, seemingly abandoning him and his mother. But this time, the memory revealed a different truth. Geese kept his distance not out of cruelty, but out of a desire to protect them. As someone entrenched in a dangerous world, he didn't want his family anywhere near the threats that came with it. Before hitting the bottom, Rock finally understood that his father wasn't entirely the villain he had made him out to be. But Terry wasn't about to let him fall. Rock opened his eyes to see Terry had leapt after him, grabbing his arm. With his other hand, Terry held onto Billy's staff, which dangled precariously from the edge, while Billy called out for them to climb up quickly. The three of them let out a collective sigh of relief as they finally made it back to safety. Okay, quick pause here. Can somebody please do something about this freaking ledge already? It's like anyone who even breathes near it ends up falling off. Geese, Rock, Billy, Vox, Marco, they all took a fumble, only to get saved at the very last second. Well, except for Marco, he actually went all the way down and somehow survived by bouncing off his own thick chest hair. Yep, that's really what they went with. I'm not making this up. Anyway, back to our heroes. With Rock finally back to his senses and out of danger, he was able to reunite with his long-lost mother, a touching moment he never imagined would actually happen. With Rock now out of the picture, staying alongside Terry and Billy, Kain received an unexpected visit sometime later. Gato, followed closely by his sister Hotaru, had come looking for answers, specifically about their father. They believed Kain might know something, and he did, just not what they were expecting. Kain dropped a bombshell. Gato had been chasing the wrong man this entire time. The real murderer of his mother was Kain himself. That was all Gato needed to hear. He immediately took a fighting stance and charged at Kain. The two clashed, and after a fierce battle, Gato emerged victorious. Before dealing the final blow, Gato asked one last time, was Kain truly the one who took his mother's life? That's when Grant stepped in and confessed. He was the real killer. Kain had lied to protect him. Gravely injured and feeling his time was short, Grant came clean. He explained that he had been after Gao, Gato's father, who worked as an enforcer for a rival gang. But when he struck, it was Gato's mother who got in the way. Her death was a tragic accident. Wrong place, wrong time. Hotaru, enraged by the truth, was ready to finish off Grant, but Gato stopped her. At that moment, they both heard Gao's voice. He told them to spare Grant, as his fate was already sealed, and then he left them with one final taunt. If Gato still wanted answers, he'd have to come find him. So Gato set off to confront his father, but this time it wasn't for revenge, it was to get answers. And for the first time, he invited Hotaru to join him, finally recognizing her strength and putting faith in her. And what do you know? We don't need a sequel to find out what happens next. Gato and Hotaru eventually tracked down their father, and Gato challenged him to a fight right away, but alone he couldn't win. That's when Hotaru joined the fray. Together, the two siblings managed to defeat their father and bring him down. They learned that Gao hadn't abandoned them without reason. He had been chasing down their mother's assassin this whole time. With the truth finally out, the family returned home. It might take time for them to fully heal, but one thing is certain, this broken family is finally starting to come back together. Back at Kain's villa, a final request awaited him, Grant's last wish. He asked Kain to accept Vox as his new bodyguard. Kain was hesitant at first. After all, Vox had once tried to assassinate him, but under Grant's insistence, Kain gave Vox a chance. He put him through a combat test, and after witnessing his strength and unwavering determination, Kain finally accepted him. Afterward, Kain and Grant shared a rare, heartfelt moment, reflecting on all they had accomplished and reminiscing about the past. In a rare show of vulnerability, Kain admitted that he wouldn't trade Grant for all they had built together. Grant wasn't just his right hand, he was irreplaceable. But, tragically, Grant didn't hear those final words. In the middle of their conversation, the old warrior passed away peacefully. And in that moment, the always composed and cold Kain showed something we'd never seen before. Genuine sorrow. His expression said it all. He had just lost his closest friend and the man he considered a father. Or did he? According to Janae's ending, the young pirate actually managed to rescue Grant thanks to her crew's doctor and their miraculous skills. But let's be real here, as fun as that sounds, her ending is highly non-canon. Janae may be a fan favorite, but she's not a central character in this story. Her ending would completely undo Grant's emotional arc and undermine Vox's entire purpose. Vox, who stepped up as Grant's successor, has already proven himself as a capable, trustworthy protector. Erasing that with a last-minute pirate rescue would cheapen everything. And while we're talking about non-canon endings, Mai's ending falls into that category too. In hers, she teams up with Sokaku to destroy the Jin Scrolls. A noble move in theory, but one that breaks the story. If these scrolls were destroyed, the transaction Kain and company arranged to get Marie back would never happen, meaning Marie would still be held captive by Mr. Big. After all that build-up, that kind of ending just wouldn't land. It might be well-intentioned, but it's not the conclusion this story needed. Now if you want a canon ending that does wrap things up satisfyingly, look no further than Marco's. After retrieving the dojo's stolen sign, Marco returns home to find his gym packed with new applicants. Inspired by his strength in the tournament, he even gets a call from Ryo Sakazaki himself, who praises his efforts and officially appoints him as the new head of the dojo. And as if that wasn't enough, Yuri decides to entrust her gym to Marco too, while she goes off to travel and meet Robert. And this is when we learn that Yuri is apparently an immortal vampire, because that's the only logical explanation for how she still looks like she's in her 20s when she should be pushing 50s. As for Terry, he resumed his never-ending journey, choosing to leave Southtown now that his worries about Rock had finally eased. Of course, Andy and Mai weren't thrilled about him sneaking off without saying goodbye to his pupil, and while Terry silently agreed with them as he sat on his signature roofless train wagon, Rock caught up with him on a bike just in time. The two exchanged a heartfelt farewell, wishing the best for one another. And fittingly, the game closes with Terry's iconic goodbye gesture, tossing his cap to the character who shares the spotlight with him. This time, that honor went to Rock. If I had to sum up Fatal Fury's City of the Wolves in one word, it would be closure. Sure, the game is packed with fan service and clearly meant as a love letter to longtime fans, but what sets City of the Wolves apart, especially compared to something like KOF 15, is that none of it feels gratuitous. The callbacks, the reunions, the character arcs, all of them serve a purpose. They contribute to the story, to the characters, and most importantly, to delivering a sense of meaningful closure. Rivalries are finally settled, chapters come to an end, long-lost items are recovered, families are reunited, new bonds are formed, and even pants are finally being worn. Of course, not every question is answered. For instance, who sponsored this KOF? What's the Stroheim family's connection to all of this? And let's not forget Mr. Big. I highly doubt he's going to keep a low profile and live the rest of his life peacefully. Questions that will likely be answered in future DLC. Mr. Big is already announced after all, or even in a full-blown sequel. But as it stands, City of the Wolves is the sequel we waited decades for, the one Mark of the Wolves truly deserved. And now, at long last, the wolves can finally stop howling. Special thanks to my patrons for their support. I hope you enjoyed this video. Give it a thumbs up if you did, and why not consider subscribing to the channel. Thanks for watching.